Sacred 3 is a fast-paced arcade hack-and-slash co-op action RPG launched in 2014 on multiple consoles and PC. It promises fun, comedy, and a rewarding experience as you battle your way through hordes of Grimoks, brute beasts, and undead wizards, and it delivers on absolutely none of that. Like, at all. Today, we're going to talk about one of the worst reviewed RPGs on Steam, Sacred 3. Because for some reason I thought, hey, you know what would be a really good series for YouTube? If I played all these really terrible RPGs, or at least these really badly reviewed RPGs, and see, are the bad reviews right? Do they match the game? I may be regretting that decision, but here we are. So what is Sacred 3? Well, Sacred 3 is described by publisher Deep Silver as an arcade hack and slash game for up to 4 players set in the world of Ankaria. The hack and slash brawler was released in August of 2014 for PC, PS3, and Xbox 360. It was published by Deep Silver after acquiring the rights from former Sacred developer Ascaron. The game was developed by Keen Games. To say it wasn't well received might be a bit of an understatement. With mostly negative reviews on Steam and a measly 24% positive rating, it's one of the worst reviewed games in the RPG category on the platform. Sacred 3 wasn't spared by game reviews beyond Steam either. A 4 of 10 on GameSpot, 57% on Metacritic with an overwhelming dislike rating of 1.5 from users, a 5 out of 10 from Eurogamer, and perhaps the most generous of all, a 6.5 out of 10 from IGN. But is it really that bad? Is Sacred 3 really as bad as all these mountains of negative reviews say? Or are people that were fans of the game just disappointed by the departure from the original mainline games? We begin the game learning a bit of story, getting us situated for our inevitable jaunt into the world of Ankaria, the ruler of the Ashen Empire, the devastatingly named Lord Zane, has begun opening the gates of the underworld after the sundering of the sacred bond between the people of Ankaria and the Seraphim Guardians. Basically, Lord Zane wants to take over the world by obtaining the heart of Ankaria. He's a Power Rangers villain. Lord Zane has returned.
Oh, he's gonna ruin everything.
From the get-go, we see just how heavily Sacred 3 leans into demonstrating the entire script for the game was written by a 15-year-old who giggles every time they hear the phrase sexy pants.
Sexy pants!
As you jump from generic city under siege to generic city under siege, you unlock people called weapon spirits. These provide you buffs and debuffs, and many of them are clearly designed to work in the multiplayer setting. This is where I want to point out that I did not try this game as multiplayer, not because I didn't think it would be worth it. In fact, I thought it might make the game more enjoyable, but I didn't feel like I should inflict this game on anyone else. I'm making a video on it after all. They didn't choose this travesty, I did. These spirits, though, are notable more for their dialogue.
All you're doing is making him angry, and you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
I'll still respect you in the morning.
Than what they actually do for you in game. They will occasionally repeat a few lines, cycling through them throughout your missions. It's at this point in the review that I want to pause and appreciate the incredible prose, the wit and depth of dialogue in Sacred 3.
Troops, rain poison down on these interlopers before they reach my well. I want to watch.
We drink poison to prove we're men. We throw up afterwards to prove we're not insane.
Sexy!
Yeah.
Oh, right, I promised no singing. The well is safe, and so are the lands, the people, and the ears of Ankaria.
So that's kind of the tone for the game. And going in blind, I was kind of caught off guard and quickly became frustrated by it. It felt like any time a dialogue box would open up, I was already groaning. From flat delivery to poorly written attempts at bad jokes, it just kept going. Once in a while, sure, but the game bludgeons you over the head with just how little it takes itself seriously. This isn't the wit of games like Fable or Bard's Tale. With its 16+ rating, the game is marketed towards teenagers and adults, but the humor seems to fall flat on anyone other than your neighbor's 12-year-old son named Kyle, who drinks Mountain Dew and counts the Paul brothers as heroes. The writing feels like it fed into everyone's worst impulses. Someone said, "Hey, this is funny," wrote it, and didn't check with anyone. So much of this game feels like the QA step was more of a suggestion than a requirement. But hey, at least it was relatively bug-free except for one crash. It doesn't matter that the actual writing and story and narrative of the game is kind of bad, right? Like, that's not that important.
Frolic while you can! You haven't begun to harm the Ashen Empire! We are legions!
Is this supposed to be an Easter egg for Mass Effect?
Chapter 5, verse 9. We acknowledge this is an appropriate metaphor. We are Legion.
Everything about this game makes me think it's older than it actually is. It feels like a game released 20 years ago, not less than 10 years ago. Hell, I think I enjoyed playing Raid Shadow Legends more than this game. Speaking of Raid Shadow Legends, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this video. Literally any RPG that is not Sacred 3. But alas, we continue on, mowing through enemies, many of which seem to be just the same 3 or 4 models, used every few levels, sometimes adding in some color variations, and of course the elites, which are significantly harder than the normal trash, and you get a few of these each level. The combat is repetitive, often feeling like it's easier to not bother with your skills, or just spam them. I routinely forgot about them because it was usually more effective to just hit my main attacks, often from a distance with the occasional dodge and shield break interrupt. When faced with large hordes of enemies, spamming abilities added an extra oomph of damage or an occasional partial freeze of enemies, but they never really felt essential. The repetitive nature of combat really begins to weigh on you, adding an exponential debuff to all the terrible jokes. When you do finally succumb to the hordes of enemies, you'll pop back to a respawn point with 20% less gold. Unless, of course, you had a potion on you, which you can use to pop back in immediately. But hey, at least there's the odd barrier to break through, falling rocks or traps. Yes, it has traps. Very obvious traps.
Yay!
Now, the funny thing is, after my initial gameplay session of this game, I was very hopeful that I had, already put in a significant amount of time. It felt like I had put in 2 or 3 hours of gameplay, maybe even 4. This game drags. So, in conclusion, is Sacred 3 the worst RPG ever made? No, it's not the worst. It's potentially not even the worst I've ever played, but I wouldn't play it if I hadn't been doing it for this video. Many of the issues I have tend to be more personal to me. I found the writing to be damn near offensive in just how bad it was. The jokes didn't land. They were often repeated ad nauseum throughout the level. You had to listen to them all. You could not skip through them. It was a constant barrage of just bad writing, bad narrative. I didn't find that I cared about the world. I didn't find that I cared about my character. I didn't care about anything. And then you throw on top of all that lack of immersion and pulling you into the game, which is something that RPGs are generally very good at, and you end up with combat that doesn't even feel satisfying. If you're going to have an arcade type game, it should at least have really fun combat. Now, granted, part of this could be the fact that I did not play this as a co-op, which is very clearly what you're supposed to do with this game. But for a game released as recently as this, I feel like older games like Gauntlet Legends did it better. They made it more fun, and there's not necessarily a problem with a game not taking itself seriously, but at least have some better writing, more engaging combat, a more balanced approach to how you go about using that combat. These, like, being able to spam abilities and then these random usage of barriers and things, and just everything being repetitive. It felt like, in a lot of ways, there was an attempt at level design. There was a good attempt at making each level feel unique, at least after the first couple. The art on the levels was actually pretty good, but it falls flat because the enemies are just very repetitive. You have the same enemy types over and over and over again. You have the same abilities over and over again. You have the same traps. You have the same falling rocks type things. It's all the same. I got through roughly about 1/3 of the game, and I couldn't tell you the difference between level to level. They all felt the same. And I should mention that I played this initially on the hardest difficulty. I am not very good at games, and the hardest difficulty still did not feel very difficult. And one of the annoying things about it is all it seemed to do was just increase the health points and the damage that the bosses did. There was no innovation there on adding different types of skills or attacks or anything like that. It was just add more HP, add more damage, makes it harder. I eventually just dropped down to the easiest setting to get a bit more footage because I was just bored. I was so bored with this game. I didn't want to play it anymore. I think Eurogamer said it best. Sacred 3 could have been a really good game and a much needed shot in the arm for a series that has always struggled for relevance. There's simply not enough of it though, and what is there is so slim and featureless as to be almost intangible. It certainly doesn't feel like a game that has been in development for years. Deep Silver announced it in 2010 and is constantly defined by what has been left out, far more than the little that has been fixed or added. As such, amusing as it is in its own shallow way, Sacred 3 can only come as a mediocre disappointment to the hardy few who still consider themselves Sacred fans. Basically, if you want a co-op RPG that actually, will feel good, just play Vermintide 2. Like, the humor actually makes sense in that game. The gameplay loops are actually fun. Just go play Vermintide 2. If you would like to see more videos like this, please let me know down in the comments. What game would you like me to play? It could be one that you think is good and just hasn't had the light of day, or it could be one that you think is absolutely terrible. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I can't leave you like that though, with this taste of a bad RPG in your mouth. So let's talk about an RPG that's actually worth your time and should be releasing soon or will have already released depending on when you're watching this video. Baldur's Gate 3 is coming out in August of 2023, and this game promises to be a wonderful experience. I have personally been playing through the Act 1 for the last couple of years as it has been in early access, and have really enjoyed every moment I have spent in that game. It is from the developers of Divinity Original Sin 2, which if you have played that game, you know how good it could potentially be. Take a look at the video I put on why I think Baldur's Gate 3 will be a really great game right here.
Baby cakes! Sexy pants! Sexy!